Welcome back to Today News.
My name is Ashley Prashad, and this is my co-host Zoe Lee.
Today we will be talking about climate change, and more specifically, its effects on the water cycle.
Climate change is a serious problem that we need to pay attention to. Now, let's look at an excerpt of a documentary looking at how climate change affects water issues, access, and patterns.
Hello, I am here to talk to you about how climate change affects water patterns, issues, and access. Start off with how climate change affects water patterns. The most noticeable effect that global warming has on the water cycle is causing hurricanes. Hurricanes such as Gephilo can intensify up to 46.1% from a 2 to 3 degree increase in global temperatures. Sources and models from c2es.org have projected that there will be a 45 to 87% increase in the frequency of Category 4 to 5 hurricanes, although hurricanes of this degree will be less common. Now let's talk about issues. Places such as Australia are already facing the effects of climate change on water in the form of droughts, or more precisely, increased intensity and frequency of these droughts. This is a quote from climatehotmap.org. Globally, the proportion of Earth's surface in extreme droughts is projected to rise from about 1% today to about 30% by late this century, if our heat-trapping emissions continue to rise at high rates. This fact alone should scare you, and if it doesn't, I'm worried. Because 30% of the Earth's surface is about the size of Asia. Just imagine every part of Asia experiencing extreme drought. 4.463 billion people living in extreme drought. 59.4% of the world's population living in extreme drought. If we do nothing about this, then extreme droughts will become normal. Now let's talk about access. The question is, will I be safe from this? Well, the honest answer is probably not. The UN Population Fund stated that we should start running out of fresh water by 2050. So if you're still young, expect some big changes to happen over your lifetime. Being more specific, the major cities likely to run out of drinking water first include Istanbul, Beijing, Moscow, Cairo, London, and others. Although there'll be a third of the world after that.
Thanks for that, Ihsan. Now, let's dive deeper into some of the world's articles on climate change. We looked at some newspaper articles from the US, the Middle East, and the UK. We included 2 articles from the US, including Fox News and CNN News. This first article was from Fox News, and it was criticizing Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez for quoting the 12 years doomsday remark, and then saying that it was only someone with a social conscience of a sea sponge would believe it. However, this tweet was created in a sarcastic regard, because the world isn't actually ending in 12 years. 12 years is actually the tipping point where climate change will be theoretically irreversible. However, it's interesting how this article perceived this tweet. Our second news article was from CNN, and it was saying that the levels of CO2 in our atmosphere have reached the highest point that we have ever seen it at since before the evolution of Homo sapiens. This article also states that we are quote-unquote locked in for a further rise if more action is not immediately taken by the world's governments. The third article that we found was from a newspaper called Al Jazeera from the Middle East. This was the most surprising article out of the 4 newspapers because we thought that this newspaper would dismiss the effects of climate change. However, this newspaper's perspective was that the media doesn't do enough to talk about the effects of climate change. News outlets could cover climate change stories daily and still sell their stories short, but they struggle to find the right way to cover the relentless onslaught of information and data that is newsworthy. The final article that we found was from The Independent from the UK. This article talked about younger generations taking up the fight against climate change, including their own Greta Thunberg. This article also quoted John Lanchester's novel, The Wall. As the young protagonist in this novel says, "People of my generation can't talk to their parents. The life advice, the knowing better, the back of my day wisdom, it was all part of the whole deal between parents and children. It just doesn't work. Want me to straight up tell you what I'm doing in my life, Granddad? No thanks. Why don't you travel back in time and un-F the world, then travel back here, and then maybe we can talk. Now that's all. Let's head back to Ashley.
Today, I will be discussing climate change and the effect on the water cycle. Why does climate change affect the water cycle, you may ask? Well, since air temperatures are rising, more air can get evaporated, which can lead to more intense rainstorms and intense flooding in coastal communities across the world. But while this is happening, other countries may experience dry air, which can lead to major drought. This is my short segment of how and why climate change has a huge effect on the water cycle. That's all I have for today. Thank you for listening.
But what can be done and has been done to help remedy this situation? Many organizations such as TEC, the UN, and the C2ES are trying their best to greatly reduce the causes of climate change and the effect it has on our Earth. These companies generally try to reduce the climate change by reducing the greenhouse gas emissions. This makes sense since greenhouse gas emissions are the leading cause of climate change. Some communities are even changing their lifestyle to reduce climate change, doing things such as using renewable energy, biking or walking instead of using a car, bus, train to the metro for transportation, and using their energy wisely. But what can you do? For one, you can donate to these organizations to help their plans become a reality. Donating to organizations could fund their ideas and help fund new research to help reduce effects on climate change. You could also partake in protests against climate change. Protesting will raise awareness on what you're protesting against. That's all.
The media and government play a large role in addressing climate change. In an ideal world, they would address climate change as a major urgent problem. However, many media sources don't address climate change as much of a big problem as it is. This means less people know what this problem is, who it affects, how long we have, and how big of a problem it is. Many governments, including many of Canada's conservative parties, don't think we need too much to solve this rapidly growing problem. Conservative politicians think we can do less and less, says Catherine McKenna, Environment Minister. Barely anyone used to talk about climate change or asked any problems about it in the past. This was partly because local news stations didn't broadcast problems relating to climate change as much. Nowadays, at least some people are questioning what the media is telling them about this problem. In 2016, there were almost no questions asked, which is insane, said Tony Bartolom, a reporter who covers climate change in South Carolina. It's a good start that we're starting to hear questions for 2020. That's all for my statements.
So today we're down at the University of Toronto. I don't know why, but we're just here. And we'll be asking 3 different types of people their opinions on climate change and how it affects the water system. So for example, a random person, somebody that's studying science, and government opinion. Let's get right into it. Would you like to be in our video for a science project?
Video?
Yeah, for a science project.
The room or
It's just for a science project.
no?
Oh no? It's okay. We're here with,
Muntaha Malik.
and I'll be asking her today her opinion on climate change and how it affects the water system.
I personally didn't think that the climate was affected by water systems, or the water systems were affected by the climate. But I think one of the ways could be because of the fact that with our water systems, we have a lot of overusage and we use the water without actually thinking about where it's going. And so because of that overusage and basically, like, for example, oil spills and unclean water, that would affect our climate because we have water in the system that is not being used appropriately.
Alright guys, now we are here with somebody that's actually studying science at the University of Toronto.
So, hi, my name is Hannah Shuth, and I study at U of T, Scarborough campus. I'm currently majoring in human bio and neuroscience. The question was, do you want to say it?
Yeah, how climate change affects the water system.
Okay, so I think that climate change affects the water system because, number one, pollution. So, pollution is a huge factor to climate change, and a lot of the times what it does is it can infect the water with like garbage. It can infect the water with the gas. It can infect the water with carbon dioxide, and Yeah, so that's one of the main reasons why I think climate change affects the water. I also think that global warming has a huge factor to this as well.
That's all for today, folks.
Hopefully you learned something about climate change and the water cycle.
Sending it back to you, Steve. Good night.